Our first session is building a digital strategy to innovate, automate, and accelerate. In this session, Phoenix will give an overview of the obstacles they've seen the sector face and what lies ahead. They'll be exploring some charity case studies to find out how they used digital solutions to move their services forward during the pandemic. And this session will also explore the many facets of transformation charities do need to consider, including security, user adoption, productivity, automation, and cost optimization. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Andrea Cowell, Account Manager at Phoenix Software, and Trevor Kerr, Head of Digital at Together Trust. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Andrea Cowell from Phoenix, and today we are going to be exploring how charities can use digital technology to innovate and find new ways of working in challenging times. So thank you very much for joining us. 2020 was an unprecedented year for charities across the globe, and the charity sector had to make more challenging decisions, looking at new ways of working, fundraising, and innovate quicker than ever before to keep some of the services running for those who needed it most. In today's session, we're going to explore some of the themes in the sector and hear firsthand from one of my customers, Trevor from the Together Trust, about how they responded. We strongly believe that everyone should have the chance and the knowledge to seize the opportunities that 2021 has to offer and make it a year of recovery and growth where fresh ideas can flourish. When we think about the challenges facing the sector and what we hear most from the charity organisations that I serve, top of the mind is finding new revenue streams that may have been lost, ensuring that their staff and clients can access services from anywhere at any time in a secure manner, and ensuring that they are getting the most out of the technology that they've already invested in or finding cost-effective ways to innovate. The charities who have been able to deploy remote working solutions ensure data security and open opportunities to share information and make decisions quickly and have a better chance of being able to focus on the day-to-day business of the charity. So with that in mind, unfortunately, Trevor couldn't join us live today. So we are just going to flick back to a little video that we recorded earlier on in the week with Trevor. Okay, so with some of that in mind, I'd like to introduce one of my customers, Trevor, who works for the Together Trust, and it'd be great to hear from you, your perspective on what this means to the Together Trust. So can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and what the Together Trust do?
Yes, sure. So I am Head of Digital at Together Trust. I have been there just over a year, and it's my first role in the charity sector. So part of this, working for a lot of blue chip companies and some startups. So it's quite a different approach in terms of IT. Definitely for me, this year has been a baptism of fire because 1 month after starting a new role, we're immediately thrown into a lockdown situation with an organisation who had no real experience of working from home, remote working, distance learning. All of these things were completely alien. So it's been let's say it's been a challenging year, I think, for a lot of people. Trying to not only implement new IT systems with the help of Phoenix, but also to try and bring the staff along with us, some of whom have been with the trust for maybe 15, 20 years and are very, very stuck in their ways. So that's kind of where, what the last year has been focused on for me.
Definitely, and you've just said obviously you started a year ago or so, and then a month later we were kind of thrown into this pandemic. Did that change your overall view and plan for the Together Trust?
Yeah, I mean, I should have really given you a little overview as well of what Together Trust do, and it is quite diverse in terms of the services that the Together Trust provides. So we have, the main thrust is in the education space, for SEND. So we have 3 colleges, but we also provide a fostering service. We have 10 residential children's homes. We provide mediation services for local authorities and things like state clinics. So there's quite a lot of services. You know, the trust brought me on board because they were looking at an overall transformation program, and I feel we're only really dipping our toes in the water in terms of the transformation. But this year, in some ways, has played into my hands because what I inherited was an organisation where IT had been basically, sewn together over many years. There's no overall strategy. We had, as an example, we had 3 different tenancies for our Microsoft email solution, 2 of which are in-house. We had just so many different other platforms that don't talk to each other, and nothing's integrated with our Active Directories. It was the starting point was quite difficult in terms of what we had to do this year. We were really keen to provide people with things like Microsoft Teams, and in order to do that, we had to get all of the basics right. So I think that's where the work that we did with Phoenix was really, really valuable at the start of the year. We spent probably first few weeks just analysing the network across Together Trust and looking at a migration plan in terms of how would we get all of the employees onto one single tenancy, so that we could then start rolling out things like Teams and start using SharePoint and collaboration, all things that were new to the people who work for the trust. Say prior to this piece of work, we were using on-prem Outlook at 3 different tenancies, no collaboration of documents, everything just on internal networks and VPNs. So we've come a long way this year with Phoenix's help. We probably got the basics up and running within 2 months, I think, in terms of getting the whole organisation migrated over to 365. And then we've been basically pushing a bit further in terms of getting them to use things like SharePoint and training them upon what Teams is for. It's not just about video calls, and there is a misconception about that. And then the focus, I think, really has switched. Since November, it's been more about what we do around the education piece. So we've been doing a lot of work with Microsoft Teams for classrooms, and getting that implemented and embedded across the 3 colleges. And that's now quite stable. So remote teaching is now taking place. So that's kind of where we're at now. I think we've brought everything together so we have a good starting point for what I consider to be the next phase of our transformation.
And what kind of challenges have you come across when you've been trying to move everything across from an IT point of view, or push back from any of the end users, because that's always a difficult one?
Yeah, I think for the IT challenge, it hasn't been that difficult for us. I think what has been difficult is the bringing the staff along with us on this journey. If we were back in the sort of normal way of working, we would have brought people in for face-to-face training sessions. We would have had, we have quite a big learning and development team, and we could have gone through and got everyone trained up. But clearly that wasn't an option. So trying to, encourage people to, to start using the tools and take some time out to do some e-learning, for example. That's been the real challenge this year. It took a long time, but we're now at a point where I would say the last time I looked at the stats, which was last week, we've got probably about 2/3 of the organisation log on to Teams each morning. And I can see that, the number of meetings and conversations and everything else has just exponentially increased over the last 6 months. So, I think they're getting there, but I think that's the challenge in the current climate, it's bringing the staff along with you. Certainly, you know, getting the IT stuff in place wasn't that difficult. You know, we worked really well with Phoenix. You know, we've only got a very small IT team in house, so we're very, very dependent on external companies to partner with us and help us get through these things. So I think that relationship actually has worked out really well over the last year. Yeah, so we're obviously now talking about where we want to go next.
It's nice to hear. If you had any advice for other organisations about possibly how to overcome the challenges or where to start, what would that kind of look like?
I think make sure your training materials are all ready before you start anything. We kind of learned that, you know, doing the transformation piece first and then trying to roll out training afterwards was a very tall order. I think it would have been better if we could have trained people up and had them ready for a switchover, but we didn't really have the you know, the option given the situation that we were in. But I would say to anyone now, you know, if you do have the time, make sure your staff are trained before you do anything in terms of implementing a new system or, you know, new ways of working. It's just so much easier when they're on board before it actually gets launched than trying to then, you know, very quickly get them to change their ways of working.
Definitely. And do you consider the digital strategy is now complete for the Together Trust, or?
No, not by a long shot. Because so this year for us, you know, we've got the basics in place. We've got, you know, everyone in the trust now has a, you know, an email address that is togethertrust.org.uk, which we didn't have before. We had many different domains. So, you know, everyone has the same login process. We've managed to use single sign-on to start integrating some of the other platforms that we use. So we're bringing things together, but it's only the starting point, and we are looking at how we actually streamline our services. You know, we're talking about how we bring things like Microsoft Dynamics into the organization and start to do a lot more data capture and reporting than we currently do. So it's really at the starting point. I think the pandemic this year has meant that some of this transformation work has had to take a little bit of a backseat, because it's quite a challenge for the schools. You know, residential homes, it's not the best time to be looking at how changing the way people work when they're really struggling to actually just get through, you know, the current current COVID period. Just to give you an indication, you know, we had a situation where we had 17 people in one residential home all test positive for COVID in you know, one day.
Oh, wow.
So logistics of having to try and work out keep that residential home running when, you know, basically 3/4 of the staff have tested positive and can't be there anymore. You know, to then come along and say, well, and now we want you to change your current processes and, you know, safeguarding tools and everything else. It's just not the right time. So transformation is starting, but it'll really sort of depend on how quickly things come back to some sort of, you know, normal way of working, I think.
Wonderful. I think the only other thing that I'd kind of like to touch upon, Trevor, is maybe where you started. So what made you look at the different possible assessments and stuff and how they helped?
When we started out initially, we needed to find out how bad the situation was at Together Trust. So Phoenix, you know, helped us through some workshops to basically go through each of the different kind of areas that we would need to focus on if we were going to move everyone on to Microsoft 365. So, you know, we spent time, sort of 3-4 days in each area, just drilling down and seeing what the work packages would need to be to support Together Trust to actually get us to the point that we wanted to be at. and then to start putting in the planning and timing of how we manage to achieve all of that. Okay.
Wonderful. So I hope you found that session useful and that there's something in there that you can take back to your own organisations. But if you do need anything, please do feel free to reach out. We at Phoenix Software are always happy to help.
Awesome, good session to kick us off for the day. Big thank you to Andrea and to Trevor, who was unfortunately not able to join us for the Q&A, but we do have Andrea. Andrea, are you with us? Hello.
Yes, morning.
Good morning, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, can't complain. Got that conference buzz going on, which is great. Sorry, I'm having to run this on 2 machines this morning, so I'm aware the camera's here, but I'm having to look here to see the question. So I'm not just being odd. But no, great. That was a great session. Really good one to kick us off. We've got loads of questions coming in. So I'm just going to start from the top, if that's all right with you.
Yeah.
Champion, so first question we've got is, how long do the workshops last, and what do you get from them as an attendee?
Yeah, so it depends on which element that you're looking at moving. So we can look at Exchange, security, Teams, SharePoint. The assessments can run anywhere from kind of 2 to 5 days, but what we do is we scope out prior to any of the engagements to make sure that what we are delivering is correct for each customer.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much. We've got a question from Karen next. Karen says her charity is in a similar situation, different platform which don't necessarily talk to each other. However, they are a very small charity. So they're hoping to learn how they can develop a digital strategy. Have you got any advice for Karen?
Would probably just be to, one, have a conversation with us. We've got a whole host of people, a team of people that this is their job. So we would need to understand a little bit better from Karen what it was that was her priority, what she was doing first. And then we would offer advice and use our experience and knowledge to determine a roadmap that would best suit her.
Yeah, very, very poignant advice. There's also a lot of content out there, I think, about how to get started. I know we carry a lot of that content, Karen, as well. So give a scour and a search on our site about how you can get started with a digital strategy. But as Andrea rightly said, it's all about identifying what your sort of goals and metrics are first, and then having conversations. And one thing I quite often say about digital in general, it's like charities or even like marketers are the same. It's about going around and having a look what other people are doing as well. You know, we're almost thieves for a living in that sense, but
yes.
In the same vein, it's kind of looking and kind of, oh, I like what they're doing, that works for us a little bit, and that might, you know, we can maybe incorporate a bit of that into what we want to do, and vice versa. So yeah, start having those conversations. I think is the best foot forward. Moving on to the next question then. As a small charity, the biggest problem we face is funding to implement the digital changes they need. What tips do you have on how to solve that problem, if any?
So there's various different discounts and offers available. Phoenix work with most of the major vendors. If it's Microsoft that you're looking at, they have, we'll call it pots of funding for charities. There's a Microsoft Tech for Social Impact team that we work very, very closely with. And they often have little pots of money to help organisations, especially during this past year. That, you know, it's become quite relevant. Yeah. There's various different free licenses that charities can get a hold of that we can talk through with them. So there's options there. Yeah, we're here to help, basically. We've got the knowledge to help.
Good. So yeah, use that knowledge essentially. Come and tap into it. That's great. Thanks for that. Got another question here from an anonymous attendee, more on the Together Trust side of things. What were some of the key challenges that the Together Trust faced when doing that project?
So I personally couldn't answer this one because Trevor's here, so I can certainly take that one offline and get an answer from Trevor on that.
Champion, no worries. We'll pick that up later, and we'll make sure to get that out when we get the recording. And brilliant stuff. Next question then, again from Karen actually. Did you choose one significant platform and then change everything else to work with it? I think this was in relation to what Trevor was doing with the Together Trust.
So we worked with Trevor. The idea was that it was always going to be moving over to Office 365. But the big driver came obviously through COVID. The Together Trust is both a charity and education, so they needed to turn on Teams very, very quickly as soon as this all hit. That they were using various different platforms for the educational side of things. So as soon as COVID hit, we just helped straight away and decided what was a priority. Getting Teams out there first was the big one, and then we could start looking at everything else.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think most organisations and companies probably did it in a very, very similar way. It's about rapid change, isn't it? And when everybody is suddenly no longer in the office, you've still got to talk to people. So that's kind of the big one for sure. Another great question here, actually, from an anonymous attendee. In your humble opinion, what does a digital strategy look like, and what should be in it?
Ooh.
I mean, it's a bit of an open-ended question, but it is a great one.
Yeah, that's it's a tough one. There's such an abundance out there at the moment of technology, so I would always recommend regularly reviewing things with the vendors that you're working with. Look at their IT roadmaps. Most of them can be found online. Ensure that your organisation's technologies roadmap is defined with that as well. Digital is just a world of complicated stuff that changes daily. So that's kind of where people like ourselves, Phoenix, come in, because it's our job to know what's changing, when it's due to change, and help push your organisation and ensure that you're getting the best value for money out of what you're paying for as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think what we see quite often is strategy can often get pigeonholed in there, or it's just marketing and fundraising, or it's just delivering services, when actually you need to strip it back to everything that lies beyond that. And I think to the person who asked this question, check out Dania Ty's session from Tuesday, we've had a 3-day conference, who talked about the digital infrastructure that supports all of these services that you can't often do. You can't often do a lot of the marketing fundraising without assessing what your digital needs are and knowing what your digital infrastructure looks like. Infrastructure skills on top of that as well. There's so many different layers that come that are beneath the very sort of top level of delivering services and marketing to your audience and user base, that a digital strategy is all encompassing. And one thing we often see here is, like, digital should be part of everything. You shouldn't have a digital team, essentially. It should be like every team should be thinking digitally in that sense, and that's part of the culture and everything else that comes with a digital strategy. But I think I could talk about that for weeks, so I'm going to move on to another question. As another great question, from your in your opinion, are there any sort of proven methodologies, frameworks, or general ideas that help ensure people within an organization adopt digital technology?
Tough one. Phoenix use a framework that helps embed change and user adoption with an organization called ProSci. We work with business stakeholders and users to understand their requirements. We get to understand what they need from the solution, make it relevant to their organisation, Through this process, we train end users as well in the different aspects of technology, and make sure that the organisation uses the technology that they've invested in.
Yeah, makes sense. And have you got any advice? There's a few questions in the chat here from various different people about organisational buy-in. How do you help sort of the charities you work with get that level of buy-in?
So
from like trustees, CEOs, that sort of thing.
Yeah, it's always about, people are often coming to us if there's a problem. So we're not going out and saying you must buy this, it'll make your life easier, because there's not one size fits all. If I'm dealing with an IT manager, they're coming to me because they've got an issue with something. So I'm going to find something to fix that, and we will then work with them to get the trustees buy into it. CEOs, financial directors, people who hold the purse strings, who don't want to open up. But if, you know, there's got to have been an issue for them to have come to us. That would be, it's getting the problem, fixing it, and showing how much time daily that could save by implementing this new process or new bit of technology.
Yeah, it's all about ROI, and that's the top press. Always want to know about ROI, don't know return on investment. So I actually had this conversation with someone in a networking room on Tuesday, and we're like, who had a very similar question to that, and we kind of discussed about like managing expectations, showing what sort of return you're going to get for that investment, and not asking for everything up front, because it quite easy could be like, we need all of this, but maybe showing clear roadmaps and plans on how to get certain things. So I think we've got time for one more question, and I'm going to go with the one from Owen. How did you identify and prioritize which features for Microsoft 365/Teams to use first? I think that was a kind of a follow-up question to what you said before.
Yeah, so that would come back to, for the Together Trust specifically, they were using various different platforms to communicate. Obviously, COVID hit. They had no way to interact, communicate, and then obviously deliver online lessons as well. So Teams for the communication side was the first thing that we had to roll out, and then we did SharePoint to back everything up. So but Teams first and foremost, especially during these current times, we need to be able to talk and interact. So that was the first priority.
Collaboration is key. Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, thanks very much for joining us for the Q&A, Andrea. I really appreciate it, and thanks very much for your session. It was awesome. I believe you're going to head over to Remo now to have a bit chat with people, which is great, a networking platform, so people can join you there in a little bit. Thanks a lot, Andrea.
Thanks very much. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.